Hello? Oh, well, I think they're all sustainable fiber lands, but that's okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on pastoralist women restoring rangelands. We will start off with a film and then have a few panelists and then a bit of discussion afterwards. And really, it's a celebration of all the good work that women are doing to restore rangelands, both as pastoralists, but also those supporting pastoralists. And I think it's, we've all recognized that we as a group appreciate each other and really have, I think, raised the profile of rangelands together, both generally and as women. So it's a bit of a nice finish off to coming to the end of the COP and celebration of this as well. So it's good. So let's have the film, please. Thanks.
Rangelands cover around 54% of the world's terrestrial area. The majority of rangelands are found in dry areas with variable rainfall and patchy vegetation. However, for reasons often beyond the control of communities, many rangelands have become degraded, and without secure tenure, pastoralists are reluctant to invest time and resources into improving rangelands productivity. This film tells the story of 3 women who've taken steps to overcome these challenges, reversing degradation, restoration of lands, and improving productivity, biodiversity, and ecosystem services. Though they come from different parts of the world, their vision is the same: longer-term benefits for their livelihoods and families, as well as for the broader society and the environment. We start in Africa, Baringo County, Kenya, in the Koitian Forest. Penina Kibos, the assistant chief of Kibomo sublocation, explains how her community has improved the management of the forest and surrounding areas. They have been helped by a project supporting participatory rangeland management. Women like herself have been leading rangeland restoration activities and participating in decision-making bodies, including at village level.
I'm Penina, very assistant chief, and we are now in Koitegan Forest. We had several challenges in this place. Deforestation was done because people were cutting charcoal. We decided to fence an acreage of 30 acres so that we can plant trees, build the security house to safeguard the forest. And I hope you can see how the forest now is. It was very bad, but now the vegetation cover has improved. Even wild animals have come closer because of the vegetation. Even right now, when the rain comes, because of these trees, the rain passes this area.
Moving to Kyrgyzstan, we find a national union of pasture users called CGIAR that has been established to help communities register their pasture lands, establish pasture committees, improve management of pastures, and establish a pasture monitoring system. The union relies on women such as Guljan Asanova, the leader of the local Sari Bulak Pasture Users Union, to mobilize the community and build their capacity to handle technical aspects.
Жайыт комитети бул элди башкаруу менен түзүлгөн, бирок бир чети бул да туура да, себеби ар бир адам биздин ичкенибиз, жегенибиз баардыгы жайыттан келип чыгат. Жайыттын элдик башкаруунун артыкчылыгы жайытка чыккан адамдардын баардыгы кызыктар болот экен да, жайыт кандай сакталып калат, жайытты канткенде рационалдуу, эффективдүү башкарабыз деп, анан ар бири биздин өзүбүздүн планыбыз бар да, ошол план менен иштейбиз. Биздин жайыт комитетибизде 15 адам иштейт, 9-у аял. Анан аялдар башкарган жерде негизи көпчүлүгү ушул чын эле ден соолукка багыт алабыз да, ветеринардык аптека салдык, жалаң эле ошо ден соолукка арналган проектлер өттү.
Pastoralism is also practiced across Europe, including in the dry Mediterranean forests of Spain, managed as a silvopastoral system locally called dehesa. Elena Iscano and her sister work on the family farm or finca, supporting a complex and integrated system of food production, resource management, circular economy, and biodiversity conservation.
So the dehesa is an agro-silvopastoral land. It is a structure by joining different components: the trees, the pasture, the animals, and the humans. So one of the main characteristics of the dehesa is like their soil. It's really, really poor. We keep the amount of animals that we think it is fair for the soil to leave the time and also the manure in the soil for the plants to grow again. Also, we try to do like rotational cropping systems. So we have alfalfa for the pigs during the summer. And on that way, you guarantee that the quality of the soil, the part of the land that you are taking, it's going to be better the next year than the year you take it.
Investing in rangeland restoration is not without its challenges. One major issue is a lack of labor, not helped by the outmigration of the youth from pastoral areas.
Эми бүгүнкү күндө чындыгында эле жаштар баардыгы даяр акчага кетип калып атышат да, миграция менен эле алек болуп атышат, бирок деген жаштарды алаксытыш проблема болуп атат да. А так, если акча тапса, кызыктырса, кызыгат деп ойлойбуз да. Мына азыр бирок действительно мыяктан балдар келип кызыгып, биз могу чыгашты биз жасап берели деп айтып атышат да. Себеби бул мондай талдар өзүбүздөн өсөт бизде. Анан алар ошол бизди жыгачта тиги тоңдуктар муну деген бизден сатып кетип атпайбы? Өсүп турган боюнча сатып кетет да, алар жасап туруп мына 2 эсе, 3 эсе, 5 эсе кымбат кылып берет. Даже пенсионер возрасттагы деле апаларыбыз биздики азыр отуруп калып атышат. Анан ошол апаларды дагы иш менен камсыз кылууда, андан жашырактарды да иш менен камсыз кылат экенбиз.
Support from outside, such as through a project, can assist women overcome some of the challenges and barriers that they face, as Assistant Chief Penina explains.
The project has helped a lot because even women, they are included. Even me, you are seeing me as a lady, I'm included as a leader. And other women, they have benefited a lot because they are involved even in meetings, in trainings. We've learned a lot.
Looking to the future, the women speaking here highlight the importance of investing in the land and restoring it where it is degraded. By doing so, they are not only benefiting themselves today, but also the future generations to come.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm from Ethiopia, and I'm from the Pastoralist community of Borana in Ethiopia. And I represent the African Youth Pastoralist Initiative, and we work in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. So I'll be speaking on empowering pastoralist women in Ethiopia and restoring rangelands and reviving livelihood in the face of climate crisis. Uh, so how often do we hear about the critical role women play in restoring rangelands? So in pastoralist communities, women not only manage essential resources like water and fodder, but they also preserve indigenous knowledge for land restoration. So how can we empower them to reverse land degradation and secure sustainable livelihoods? So our community, as I mentioned, it's in southern Ethiopia, the Borana community. We're a pastoralist society, and we face harsh conditions of climate change as a whole community, but especially women and youth. We're a marginalized frontline communities that heavily rely on livestock and that's increasingly under threat due to environmental degradation and economic challenges. So our approach as African pastoralist youth, the first one is participatory rangeland management. So women and community members, they actively map degraded lands and they collaborate on restoration strategies. And there is village level committees, they oversee the implementation and they ensure equitable resource sharing. So this is done in a very grassroots level. We're a very young organization. And so we also support women to participate in local governance and advocate for rangeland friendly policies. Usually women in pastoralist communities, especially the one I come from, they're not really involved in decision making. So we're trying to empower them and support them to participate in local governance. The other one is training and capacity building. So we organize workshop on sustainable grazing practices, such as rotational grazing to prevent overuse. Because it's such a dry area with limited resources, we're just empowering the women to just practice grazing, rotational grazing so that they don't deplete one area completely, so we can restore as we go. And the other one is introduction of water harvesting techniques such as construction of water pans to enhance soil moisture. And the other one is leveraging indigenous knowledge. I'm really passionate about this one. So we're trying to incorporate traditional practices. For in my language, it's called kalo. It's a enclosed grazing system where specific areas are set aside to regenerate vegetation. And the other one is revitalization of indigenous water sharing system, also locally called ELA. So they're dug and then cemented, and then water is kept in there to use for the long run, because rain rarely comes even when it's supposed to during rainy season. So that helps to equally distribute water resources when it's scarce. And the other one is income diversification. So as I mentioned, we heavily, almost completely rely on livestock. And there was an instance in a few years back where it didn't rain for 5 consecutive years in the area. So we're trying to promote drought resistant farming like sorghum and millet to supplement diets and increase incomes. And we're also encouraging alternative livelihoods like gum and resin. My undergraduate research was on this one. So there are incense trees that grow in the southern part of Ethiopia in the Borana region, and women usually harvest incense and gums and resins from there, and they sell it and make a living out of that when livestock is endangered due to droughts. The other one is developing ecotourism initiatives that we're trying to implement. We showcase the natural beauty of rangeland, so people are maybe from the capital or the other green parts, they're really intrigued by the structure and the setup of rangeland. So we're trying to work with the tourism sector to bring more people and then collaborate with them on cultural practices of pastoral communities, and create some kind of livelihood from ecotourism initiatives as well. So lessons learned. The first one is breaking barriers. So women do really need access to resources like land, training, and financial support to lead effectively. And we need policy advocacy at local and national, even international levels. We've learned that that is really key instrument. The other thing is scaling impact. So we've learned that collaborating with international NGOs, research institutions, local government is really effective in scaling impact and bringing more attention to the way of life of pastoralists. The other one is youth and women-led change. So as the African Youth Pastoralists Initiative, we're one of a kind institution that try to address the role of youth in pastoralism, and we're also promoting women in that. So we've learned that that's really effective, and we've learned that this kind of initiatives create multi-generational knowledge sharing, and they amplify impact and sustainability for restoration projects. So yeah, looking ahead, I want to leave you with some call to actions. The first thing is invest in women, expand access to resources, provide women with financial resources like micro grants or even loans to implement and scale restoration projects. And the other one is to promote leadership development, such as mentorship. I'm a young pastoralist myself. Mentorship would go a long way in empowering me and me empowering my community. Yeah, we encourage women in a way to take leadership role in their community and decision making. So that would really go a long way. And the other thing is to foster collaboration. I really want to emphasize on that because as a pastoralist, usually we're sidelined a lot. So I want to emphasize on fostering collaboration, building cross-sector partnership with NGOs, local government, and share knowledge and align on goals for the rangelands. And yeah, encourage knowledge exchange like this one where we share success stories, bring things to the table that are impacting us, learn from each other. So forums, workshops where women can share their practices and learn from diverse global experiences like this one. Yeah, looking ahead, that would create a lot of impact. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I hope I'm right on time, but feel free to reach out.
Perfect, thank you. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions. I completely forgot to give Leonie the floor to make some introductory remarks. And so you go.
I'm doing the post opening. No, I also don't really want to take too much time. I think Botola Sarah's presentation, where did you go now? Oh, you're here, sorry. Your presentation really already said it all. I mean, we've heard during this COP also a lot of calls for, inclusive rangeland governance, like how do we bring more people into this discussion? But I think it's super important to not assume that everyone has the same access and everyone, men and women are not facing the same roles. They are constrained. Women are much more constrained by gender norms. We, face the triple burden of productive work, of reproductive work, of caring for communities. And I think, yeah, this is it's super important to have these discussions. And thank you so much to Fiona for putting us into the same room. And just, my take home message, I think, will be to find ways to really uplift those voices, to try to support women, like recognizing that they have it, a bit harder in a lot of places. So yeah, I'll leave it there, and thanks so much. And also I forgot to say that I'm Leonie from WWF International. It's great to be here. It's the last day.
Yeah, and actually a plug for Leonie's session, which starts at 10. So you're not allowed to leave her in 10:30, but then we'll go over to a session over in the G20 pavilion. Okay, thank you for doing that. So now we'll go to Kenya and to Laureen from Reconcile. You can explain your position and yeah, what you're doing and sharing with us.
Thank you so much, Fiona, and good morning to everyone. My name is Laureen Ongesa. I work at Reconcile as the programs officer. And yeah, it's a pleasure to see that we are working to ensure that women are included in most of our initiatives and actions that we're doing. So I'm going to give a case of PRM implementation in Kenya and how we've been able to involve women in the PRM in restoration process. So PRM was a concept that was designed to strengthen social integration and inclusion as much as possible to ensure that we build a stronger relationship between men and women. As I mentioned, it is actually important to ensure that we include women in everything that we do as we're talking about restoration initiatives, and we're talking about leadership, local leaderships. So we need to ensure that women also form part of some of those opportunities. And this actually should contribute to more equitable relations and opportunities for all as much as possible. We need to ensure that we are very inclusive. So how was PRM applied to restore rangelands? So PRM consists of 3 interconnected stages. One of them is understanding, planning, and then we move to the implementation. And PRM is a process that is community owned, and it's also a participatory process. So where learning takes place through a community-led implementation, it's a process of the community themselves, and community are at the forefront of implementing the process. So it's also where planning and management of rangelands is by the communities, and also a process that is supported by diverse actors. It's not just looking at us only, it's something that involves most of the actors, including the government themselves supports the process. So PRM has got a number of stages. And in Kenya, it was designed to include another 3, which was capacity building and conflict resolution, as well as developing policy and legislation. So how is PRM being a flexible process and also multifunctional tool? So PRM is a collective and participatory unit. It ensures that there's collective and participatory unit identification, whereby communities negotiate and agree on the rangeland management unit, and also define their own responsibilities on that particular management unit. It also ensures that the management unit can consist of several communities that agree and come to work together. And also it involves some technical processes that includes development of detailed participatory resource assessment for use, outlining the status of different resources. So how can women contribute to the process? Are we able to include women in the PRM process? So the first thing we did was, of course, this component of community awareness and trainings on PRM processes, where we ensured that women were involved in the process, the trainings at the beginning, even at the end. And then after that, we ensured that women were also involved in the establishment of rangelands management committee at the local level, whereby we established the committees themselves. We ensured that women are also part of those particular committees that were being established. And also, even when the community were identifying the rangelands management units, we ensured that women also participated in the process. And even during the resource assessment, we ensured that women themselves were also part of the process of resource assessment and appraisals, as well as during the resource mapping itself. We ensured that we do not leave women behind, as well as in the planning process and also in the restoration activities. So PRM as a governance process and approach, how are women involved in the governance process? So as I mentioned, it is a collaborative approach. It employs a collaborative approach of governance. And in the governance, we have the rangelands management units, which are composed of women. We also have supporting customary institutions that manage the resource grazing and the water committees. We have water committees within the communities, and we also have the resource management units. We have different community members, which will actually be composed of elders and also the men. But nowadays, due to PRM, we have women also being part of that particular unit. And we also have the government itself actually ensures that in the gathering and public participation process going on within the community themselves, women are actually involved in the process. And PRM is a process that addresses the dynamic approach, addresses the power dynamics by addressing the different round. For example, we are addressing the social hierarchies, which is something that really happened at the communities. So that particular picture, we can be able to see how much we were involving women, even in the preparation of maps during the resource mapping process, and also even in the dialogues themselves. We ensure that we have women take place in that particular activities, and also even to identify resources that are within the community level. So that was a process whereby we ensure that that was during the resource appraisal exercise that is usually being done by the men and the elders, but we ensure that women were also part of the process. So in the restoration of rangelands, we also ensure that even the restoration activities, the items of restoration, women are also taking part in the process. Through community empowerment, we were able to empower the community to just see the value of women also taking a step to ensure that they are engaged in the restoration processes. And also through institutional training and skills development. And also not forgetting the policy and legislative awareness that we really need to make them aware that some of these policies need to ensure that women are included. And even for that, actually, when we do that, we lead to community ownership. Even the community themselves own the process in a way that even women take up their responsibility, the men also take up their responsibility in the process. So that is a restoration process that was going on, and we ensured that everybody was taking part, and women were really at the forefront of that restoration initiative. So this is actually based on the teachings and the learnings that were obtained from the PRM. This woman actually is a member of our rangelands management committee in Wajir, and she took up that training to ensure that she's having a pasture management unit, that this is something that she's doing individually in her own farm, and it's really supporting her and even her own family. So she's actually leading us as an example to some of the women that are within the communities. So what are some of the lessons that we learned during that period? So one of the lessons that we learned was that gender norms and practices prescribe women's areas of work, but due to the PRM application, that was strengthened. And actually we could be able to see that women's voices were being heard more. And then while there was careful work and mobilities in rangelands have actually hindered women's engagement, PRM created an understanding of that particular process, and the role and benefits of a healthy rangelands were actually understood by both men and women. And there was a component of collective in rangelands management institutions. So everyone was actually taking up their responsibility collectively to ensure that we restore rangelands. And actually by the end of it all, we could be able to see even women taking up the more active role in the process. Actually in the rangelands management initiatives, and also in the establishment of rangelands management plans. So yeah, thank you. And yeah.
Thanks so much. And I think it initiated some really interesting questions, which I hope we'll have time to talk about later. So now we move to Colombia, and Sarah, who will tell us about some of her work that she's doing on low emission forages and evidence-based improvements for sustainable beef and reduction of emissions from those beefs. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Fiona. So I'm Sara Valencia. I'm from Colombia. I work as a consultant. I'm going to talk about some of the work that has been done in Colombia in mainly intensive cattle production systems. So I'm going to be talking about different things we've been talking about this morning. So my presentation is about the use of improved pastures in savannas for the sustainable intensification of cattle production systems. So tropical savannas are very important ecosystems in Latin America. We have the Cerrados in Brazil, we have the Orinoquia region in Colombia, and we have other regions in other, the Chaco in Argentina. And so there's a whole diversity of savannas in Latin America. Also, forest-based livestock systems cover more than 7 million square kilometers, or 34% of land area in Latin America. So it's a very important economic activity in Latin America. So here in Colombia, where we have our savannas, we have a region that's called the Orinoquia region, or the Eastern Plains. We have many diverse ecosystems here. We not only have savannas, because in this region here we have still part of the Andean mountains. So we have the Piedmont here, and here we have what you see in yellow here. It's livestock activity in that region. So here we have like high quality soils there, and in that zone is more used for milk production and also beef production. We also have flooded savannas in Casanare. That's one of the departments that compose the Orinoquia region of Colombia. We have seasonal savannas here, and we also have Amazon ecosystem in the Orinoquia. So it's very diverse, and we have like different forms of management of the pasture land on that region. So in the savannas, the traditional management it's used traditionally used in Colombia, it's burning the savanna. So this has a really high impact on the soil, but also on the fauna of the region. Okay, so they usually burn the savanna. So when the savanna starts growing again, it has a better quality, so the cattle can use it as feed. Or else it's not. It's very fibrous species there, so it's not very productive for cattle producers. Also in this region we have like one animal per 17 hectares. So it's not much intensive of a system. And on the dry seasons, on the droughts, we have animals that practically starve to death. So it's very complicated here. And also in the flooded savannas, it's also complicated because we have to move the animals from one place to another. So this is more, I was many pictures. So we're just gonna look at some pictures. So here we have the burned savanna. We have the cattle there that's grazing the savanna that grew after they burned it. This is more pictures of the savanna. We also don't have many trees, and the conservation of the forest areas, it's not well conserved. So the Alliance Biodiversity and Seed, the Forages program, has been doing breeding and selection of tropical forages to improve resistance to extreme conditions that contribute to increase animal productivity, reduce environmental impacts, and as well as reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increasing carbon captures. I have a really nice picture of Hacienda San Jose of that carbon capture. So one of the main one of the most used pasture or improved grass used in the Orinoquia region is the Orocloa humidicola, because it's well adapted to acid soils. It's also adapted to waterlogging, so it's very adapted to the whole Orinoquia region practically. It doesn't have the best nutritional quality. There's better species or cultivars from humidicola also, but this is the more adaptive species we have. And now the breeding efforts is it's focused more on improving nutritional quality and productivity, but maintaining its very adaptive condition to soil quality and also to droughts and waterlogging. So it's kind of a difficult work here. So this is what I was talking about, the production efficiency, land use efficiency. So we went from having 1 cow per 17 hectares to 1 cow per hectare. We have also seen that the Uroclea has a really special capacity to reduce also nitrous oxide emissions from soil because of the biological nitrification inhibition capacity it has. In the soil carbon capture, in Hacienda San Jose, we found that we can have 46% more carbon capture on soil compared to the savanna with its traditional management. These are the roots of the Uroclea humidicola in Hacienda San Jose. So it's very significant, and this is very important for soil conservation and also for carbon capture on soil. So these are some pictures. So you saw the savanna before, and now we're looking at the Hacienda San Jose here. It's very different. We have also native trees that has grown in Hacienda San Jose also for like their silvopastoral system. This is like a big ranch, a big company that's in charge of breeding high genetics cattle. And it's located in the Vichada. Vichada is like the last department of Colombia, like right next to Venezuela. We don't have roads there. We don't have infrastructure. Their production system is very similar to those that you can see in Brazil, only we don't have the same infrastructure, okay? So in Hacienda San Jose, we have like the buffer zones here. We have the native savanna, and we also have the Brachiaria humidicola. We have connectivity. We have savanna that crosses like the whole farm from one side to another for connectivity of the ecosystem. And we have these buffer zones of savanna, and we also have the forest. We don't have animals going to into the forest. We use fences with solar panels, electric fencing in Hacienda San Jose with electric panels, so we can control the animals and they don't go into the forest. Well, they're not really interested to go in there also, but because they have very good quality food here, they have water, they have salt. So this is more or less some of the pictures of Hacienda San Jose using improved pastures for their intensification of their production systems. These are the buffer zones, the Brachiaria humidicola, and the forest we have in the Orinoquia. Also, there's a study that came out like a couple of months ago, where they were evaluating somebody that's working with CIAT's team made an evaluation of the impact of improved pastures on the presence of birds mainly. So we have really nice results from that. If you're interested in the paper, I can share it with you. We also have deer. The fauna from that region that's near Hacienda San Jose, they like to live more in Hacienda San Jose than outside Hacienda San Jose because of the burning. So in Hacienda San Jose, it's like, I'm talking about more than 10,000 hectares. That's the size of the farm. So 17% of that, it's on conservation. Forest, savanna, connectivity areas. So we have, you can see much fauna there, including puma inside the farm. This is another initiative. It's GANSO. GANSO, it's an organization that was created by the Alliance and another company consultancy that's climate focused. They have three main initiatives to transform the land to more sustainable practices. And one of their initiatives, well, they have a standard that Fiona mentioned. They also have technical assistance, and now they're working on an investment model. So there's been investment in different farms for sowing improved pastures also. This is the farm before. There was during the sowing of the pastures, and now we have improved pastures on that land. This is a 100-hectare farm. This is another farm we have. We don't have much forage there, and this is after Ganso made the interventions on the land. And this is another farm also. So with the practices that Ganso does on the different farms, we've seen improvement of the productivity, especially in beef production farms. Mainly like they started with 250 grams per day, and with the improvement of the pastures, they have like 560 grams per day. So it doubled the weight gains of the animals. So that's been very positive for the producer, and like they're really happy, and they're telling like other producers to use improved pastures and grazing management, rotational grazing, and all the technical assistance that Ganso has been giving. So if you're interested also, I have this, this is a policy brief that was published some weeks ago also, of an economic evaluation of those two case studies of Ganso. And I hope you like the pictures. What's the...
Great, thanks so much. So for our final presentation, we'll go to the Sahel, and I pass over to Huria from C4 ICRAF to tell us about some of the work that she's been doing there.
Thank you very much, Fiona. It's my pleasure to be here, and I have seen so many panels here. I'm very happy to have all these women speaking here today. It's very refreshing. I would like to share some work we are doing in the Sahel, and it's really about the Fulani pastoralist and looking at access rights of women to trees. As many speakers showed a little bit before, trees are really important part of the rangelands, or part of the agro-silvopastoral system. And in C4 ICRAF, of course, our work is always about trees and forest. Next, oh, I have to pass it, right? So the green one. Okay, thank you. For the people who might not know the Sahel, I would like to do a little introduction about the pastoral system. And this is here in Burkina Faso. As you see, this is Burkina Faso, the country. What you see there, the movement of the pastoralists from the north to the south, and they are Fulani pastoralists. And actually, this is just Burkina Faso, but they continue moving until Ghana and even further. So basically, the entire meat produced in the Sahel, which is used or consumed by the biggest cities in the Sahel, comes from the pastoral system. Yet the problem is that the access to land and the access right of those pastoralists, and sometimes even the citizen right, like in some countries, they are not even citizen, is very questioned. So it is really interesting to see this kind of divergence between populations who are feeding the Sahel and the rights they don't have. What happens here, this is in Burkina Faso, so when they move from the north to the south, and then they move back until the north, they use different types of resources. So it's really very adapted to the variability of the temporal and spatial variability of the Sahel, because that way they avoid the degradation of the rangelands by using them in times and then leaving them to rest in other times. When you see the circles, this is because, you know, everything changed, and also systems are always changing. So some pastoralists, actually, they settle. So they have normally this relationship with these communities where when they pass, but more and more pastoralists are actually settling in those areas. However, even if pastoralists are settling, they almost have someone from the family who is moving with the animals. So the settling came because of really policies who didn't take in account the pastoralism and the transhumance. So sedentarization policies, for instance, where people, to be able to vote, they have to be in some places. To be able to go to the school, they have to be in some places. So there is no development which actually helped pastoralists to keep that well-adapted system to use the Sahel region. The whole system is embedded in a set of negotiated values, because you arrive somewhere, you have to negotiate access to resources. So it's really a very strong exchange systems, ecosystem service exchange, but also relational, and a lot of, building networks and social values. So the right and access to resources in those areas where they settle are negotiated with the communities who are there. The tree I'm going to talk about today is called the Parkia biglobosa tree. In the local language, it's called the Nere tree. This is a very important tree. Why? From different actually aspects. What you see here in black, this is the fermented seeds of the Nere tree. This is very, very rich in protein, and it's also fermented, which makes it a very high value nutrient for the food security. The good thing also is about this condiment is you can keep it very, very long. So when women don't have anything to sell, they sell this, but also for the consumption to give, communities a better nutrient, rich food. What you see in yellow, this is the powder which is in the pods, and this is also a very important one during the harvest of this tree. Children, people who are sick or who are weak, they get a lot of that yellow powder because it's very rich. So it is really important for food security. It's also important to restore land because this is a legume tree, so it does fix nitrogen. So it's really important to keep it in the rangelands and in parklands. And the most important thing is that tree is managed by women. So in the Sahel, particularly now in Burkina Faso, the land tenure is different from the tree tenure. So when you have trees in your rangeland or in your farm, those trees are managed by women while the land is managed by men. So here it's really important to make the difference between these two rights to resources. I will go back to that later on. What we did is really we tried to look at the dynamic of evolution of access and control right on this tree, knowing that I said before, you have the Fulani communities coming, but you have the autochthone communities living in the area. So the whole idea is how to negotiate and how to get access to these trees by offering, I will talk about that later, by trying to have access to resources Fulani women don't have access automatically to, because they were moving, they are not from that region. So what we did is, I hate actually showing methods in in presentations, but here I choose it particularly because one of the issues we have is when we do research about land tenure and tree tenure, it's that we assume that we can use just some approaches we use everywhere. It is very complex and you cannot get information. For instance, here we use surveys and we use direct observations. Direct observations, we had a research assistant who is from the region who was following and working with the women when they did her harvest. So during the harvest season, she was in the villages. And this made a big difference in the quality of data we got, because you cannot, when you ask people, oh, do you own the land? Already the definition of owning is so different in each community that everyone will have a different answer. So I showed that just that to see that when we do research about rights, particularly with pastoralists, we really need to adapt our research, that they can really give us the possibility to do a top-down, bottom-up research rather than a top-down one. So here are some results from the research. So we found that they are a huge stratification of rights and a very fine-tuned right to this tree. So just here an example, what you see here. So the tree, when it's standing, it belongs to someone. The harvest, this is the woman, the first spouse, who make the decision when to start the harvest. When the harvest is started, then other women can come and have more from the harvest. And then when you have the product itself, it belongs to different people in the household. So in my whole work in many countries, I have never seen such a system where you have an extremely stratified system of access to the tree. The land, for instance, is managed by men, but the tree is managed by women. And then you have the stratification, social stratification, which woman decides when regarding to the harvest. This is another example. Some pastoralists, they have acquired land in the region where they settled, but then the trees are not, every one of those trees needs to be decided who has access to this tree and who is using it. So is it the one who was before, the one who is taking it? Is it a woman? Is it a man? So this is really important. Why? Because we cannot just apply one method and then understand such a complex system. And that's why it is really important to use what we call intersectional approaches, where you just don't look at gender, woman and man, but you look at ethnicity, you look at age, you look at livelihood, you add so many other factors to understand the stratification of rights in your community. Oh, no, sorry. Here. So here is my last result slide. What we saw is that we have very, very few women, 16%, who have kind of management right to those trees. Those women are mostly from the autochthonous community, the ones who were there already. And then we have them sharing some of their trees with certain women, but also those women, they don't include pastoralist women. Pastoralist women actually are in the 60% who don't have access right. But what is really interesting is to see that they have developed few strategies on how to get access to this fruit of these trees. Those strategies, I will go through them very quickly. One of them, what we are calling here illegal harvesters, but this is actually wrong. We shouldn't call it that way. We should call it the tolerated theft. So in the community, there is an agreement that you can steal a little bit, but you should be careful. There are rules how much you can steal and what you can steal. So this kind of flexibility offered pastoralist women to get access to these fruits. And if you exaggerate, for instance, if you take everything or you take only the best fruits, then the community will react. But if you are just taking kind of a bit, and this bit is identified in each community in different ways, then it is kind of tolerated. The second one is being a secondary harvester. So when the first spouse decides, okay, this is the time to harvest, and then she gives the right to other women to harvest. And if there is anything which was left, a pastoralist woman can have access to it. And the most important part is actually the forest, because those trees also grow in the forest. They are autochthonous trees. And the forest is really the place where women can harvest because this is a collective area. The problem with the harvest in the forest is that women are not allowed to harvest there by the forest law. So here we see how the national policy is actually hindering women pastoralist women to have access to these trees by rules which are not adapted to that system. And one and last strategy, it's an interesting one. It's the trees are very tall. So when women, the autochthon women cannot harvest maybe the fruit which are very high, the Fulani women are very agile and they can do that work. So they go and harvest and then they share the harvest with the woman who has the right to these trees. So here we see how women are using a skill to get access to resources they don't have access to. So we see how you build social relations and you sell your skills to get access to these fruits. So those are the strategies women are developing to have access, pastoralist women are developing to have access. Some just, finishing thoughts. As I said before, it is really important to take into account the context-specific analysis of rights when we look at pastoralism. and also to develop approaches which are adapted and to think of the system as a dynamic system. It's not just, you know, they have right or they don't have right, but in between this, there are so many gray zones and we need to look at them. The importance of collective lands for pastoralist women, as I said before, the forest is really important for them. So we need to make sure that forest policies include that in their, you know, strategies. The agency for transformation, this is a really important one too, because, you know, we sometimes think about women in general and pastoralist women, they are just vulnerable victims we need to help. This is totally wrong because they are already helping themselves. And everything we do should be based on that, what they are doing themselves and how we can help with that. And don't come with preconceived ideas of how can we help them rather than listening and looking what is there which can transform the life of this woman and then build on that. The importance of integrating trees in the system, I don't think that I need to develop that more. And the capacity building and technical support, that's what actually few of you already said. For instance, these women who are harvesting these neri seeds, the problem of the pastoralist women, they don't have the knowledge how to transform that because they are not from those communities. But when you look at agencies who are coming to work, for instance, on value chains for this specific product, they don't include pastoralist women because they think they don't have access to the resource, while actually they develop themselves ways to have access. So this is really important that we look at capacity building and we support those women to make added value to the product. And with this, I would like to close. Thank you very much for listening.
Wonderful. So that concludes the presentation part. Could I ask all the presenters to come up? No, it stays there. It's just recording. Yeah. Could I ask all the presenters to come up and sit on up here, and also Una and Husna, please. Okay, so I'll ask Husna and Una a couple of questions about their work, and then if anyone's got any questions from the audience to any of the panelists, do feel free to ask. So Husna, could you tell us a bit about what you're doing and how you're working with pastoralist groups and pastoralist women, working on land access, resource rights, some of the challenges you're facing and how you're overcoming those?
Good morning. My name is Husna Mbarak. I work for FAO in the country office for Kenya. And my work revolves around land, tenure, environment, and livelihoods. Of course, also the bits of social protection, and majorly working within the arid and semi-arid area where the biggest land use is pastoralism. I work on tenure a lot, and especially community lands, which forms almost 70% of the land mass in Kenya, which also forms almost, actually the entire 70% of land is under pastoralism, and has the biggest, we talk of the rangelands, but also has the biggest number of pastoralism in those areas from different pastoralists from different background. And of course, we have the Boranas too in Kenya. And when we talk of community land or customary tenure rights, definitely the pastoralism aspects come in quite big in terms of livelihoods, but also the way of life. Also, when we are talking of securing the tenure, aspects of women participation, rings a bell. And I think the speakers spoke so well in terms of some of the of the issues in those areas. But the contribution of women to those areas is quite huge. And how do we bring it out, or how do we recognize it? How can we really, be able to recognize? It is a tall order in many ways, but there are so many ways. Some of the aspects have been discussed with Laureen here, but in most areas of the issues is how do we bring women, not only in terms of the land uses and the bit of what they are doing, but also into decision making and into ensuring they are part and parcel of the management and protection of these particular lands. And that is where now I will start talking of the challenges. Kenya in the last 10 or so years, first and foremost, they've officially recognized customary tenure rights by recognizing the 3 levels of tenure or categorization, that is public land, private land, and community land. So that is one big milestone for Kenya. But also recognizing the, putting into law the gender rule, which is not more, in a simple way, not more than 2/3 of the same gender will be in any committee or in any institution formation. And now this brings us to the discussions of when they are securing community land. There is a call of the law through the Community Land Act 2016 to bring on, to ensure that the committee is elected. So the gender rule applies. And we all know the aspects of patriarchal. So that is one of the biggest challenges, because now what happens is okay, we could call it not really a challenge 100%, because it is a good call, but how the is being practiced on the ground is something different. So one of the challenges is to ensure that the election of the committee has to have that gender role. So it looks, in most occasions, actually, the gender rule has been misinterpreted. They say 1/3, because the law also talks of the not more than 2/3. So it could be of either gender, either not more of women, or 2/3 of women, or not more of 2/3 of men. But now the interpretation now becomes 1/3 of the women are has to be in the committee. So meaning that they automatically assume the 2/3 will be men, 1/3 will be women. And also that is one, and to convince that we can even elect more women in the committee. And the other bit, which is also a little bit challenging, the women are elected, and truly they are there in those committees, because there is no committee which will be able to be, it won't be legally binding if they're not going to do that. So what happens now, they will just elect for the sake of ticking the box. But when it comes to the discussion and stuff, it doesn't appear. So some of the work we are doing, and not only as FAO, but with many of the partners around here, including Reconcile, is to ensure that the women participate not only in those decision-making committees, but ensure that they are always there, even when they are minuting the aspects. The other bit which we encourage and actually do a lot is to ensure that when you're talking of management and you're talking of restoration aspects, you're talking of, decision making, we ensure that it doesn't happen to have a session where men and women sit together. So you have an affirmative action to ensure that the women sit on the other side, bring out their views. Because, for example, when you're mapping the rangelands, and I think, again, Laureen talked about the Wajir women, when you're mapping the lands, or you're looking into how, putting up their maps and ensuring they put proper bylaws to it, the thinking of women is different in many occasions, from the men. So definitely in most of the work we do, you have to ensure that as much as you want to have everybody on the table, but have a little bit of an affirmative action to ensure also you meet the women on the other side. So, and also the timings. The challenges actually goes also with the timing because of the other duties and roles women play. So you'll have to ensure that you time the works very well. Still is a tall order. I know for Kenya, in terms of securing tenure, they're not yet there in many ways, but some of the areas we've been able to support have really been able to move and showcase quite some good example to the rest of the country. Currently, we are speaking of around 56 community lands claims, but there are more. And actually, there was some research which was done by a national entity. They are talking of more than 500 community lands. So you look at the percentage of it. Still, in terms of the rangelands, most of these community lands actually hold the rangelands. But the problem is now, if you're not able to secure, then nobody will take up the role of ensuring the management and protection of it. And that is an ongoing process in Kenya currently. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Husna. And then to you, Una, who works on the other side of the world in Mongolia. With the work that you're doing with the Sustainable Fiber Alliance and supporting the Kashmir value chain, what are you doing particularly to help the pastoralist women, the herders? And what are the kind of things that you're seeing, and the good and the bad?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. My name is Una Jones, and I'm from Sustainable Fiber Alliance. So we work in bringing better market access for nomadic herder communities across Mongolia, China, and Afghanistan. So we work in order of 160,000 herders. Many of them migrate, and so it's really important across our herder communities having a better access. We work, participatory rangeland management practices on the ground level, and engaging women in decision-making power, especially bargaining and being able to having a negotiating power and a market access is really important. So we've been training herders, especially herder women, in engaging in cash flow management. So we work in a banking sector, local commercial bank, for their small business management community leaders to come to talk to herder community ladies how to manage cash flow management of as a cooperative, because we wanted to ensure that herder as a family, they have a woman, but community is so important in bringing their community of fibers and bringing them to processing plants and negotiating better prices. So we worked with about in order of 1,000 women within a women's empowerment program in making sure that herder lady plays a key role in quality improvement so they can negotiate better prices for their Kashmir, for their community. So as part of this work, we have herders saying that we have, as part of our fiber, we've reduced contaminants. That's good for the processing plant. We have better market access, better bargaining power, and better prices that they've secured. So it's really important in working, and not as well as kind of working with participative management on the ground level, working with them in bringing better business access and supply chain bargaining power with them. So that's what we've did with Mongolian herders. So also with in Afghanistan, we've been working, as part of a kind of society in the Taliban, they have a strong power in the conflict region of where women's role is and how women shouldn't be educated. Many of the women have lost their husbands in the war, and that's the only way that they can get food is to talk and going out into the market and getting food for their children, and also tending their livestock and selling their livestock, selling their fibers and things to get food for their children, to support their family. So we also then engaged herders and ladies across Afghanistan in Herat regions, working with them and giving them more of an agency how they can support the community. We developed a one-stop workshops to support this women and ladies and how they can get involved and be better engaged in the Kashmir supply chain. So that's what we did. So I think essentially, we, as well as women supporting, land management, one of the key things is that how can we ensure decent work in pastoralist women, because we can ensure decent work across, if it was a factory, how are you employing people? Are you giving salary and what is the rights? In standard system, you can't quite legalize or kind of put it in the rule book and, that's how women, but essentially how we bring implementation, how we set the standard, how we implement it, and what kind of conceptual framework that we can use that's kind of not traditional, but how can we make sure that create an environment where women have better market access, and especially in the negotiating positions. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Suna. So any questions from the audience to our panelists? Go ahead. Sid.
Thank you. I think I can start. My name is David Mogo from Kenya, CG. I work with the International Livestock Research Institute. And thanks so much, Husna. We have worked together in FAO. I was just concerned about the issue of this area because we are involving women. Is it that they are so much involved because they can work, some of the shows work like periphery, the jobs which are so easy to be done in this pastoralist? I'm just concerned, how much are we empowering these women in the leadership in this sector, such that they can be able to make decisions, they can be involved on decision making. I'm just giving an example, like a place like Kenya, our culture, especially on pastoralist, most of the work is done by women, but they don't own anything. So if our assessment is their participation in those jobs, planting trees, being in the meetings and all that, probably we can think that we are doing women participation in that sector, but we are forgetting probably they are not the decision makers. How can we empower them from where we are? We empower women to make sure they can own land. Like in Kenya, women, it's less than 10%. That's the data we have who own lands. We usually say women are in agriculture, 70% in our country. It's only less than 10% who are employers. So almost 60 are employees. So my challenge is to diagnose this and involve women in all ladders of decision making. Thank you.
Okay, let's have two volunteers who'd like to answer.
Yep.
Lorraine, go ahead.
I can go first. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so how do we empower women to own land, and how do we influence their participation? So one of the things I will say is that as much as we are more on awareness and trainings, I think we also need to do the same for the men, because as you mentioned, women don't make decisions. By the end of it all, it is the elder that make decisions, and also it's the men themselves. So if we engage these men and just tell them the importance of giving women the opportunity to own land in the community, and also giving them showing them how much it is important, so that women can be able to be part of some of these decision-making processes, not just being part, but also having their issues included in the process. I think that we can be able to break the barrier. So that is one thing I can be able to say. Thank you.
Okay. Huria, I mean, in pastoral communities where you've got collective tenure, it can be a little bit more complicated. Huria, would you like to say more about this?
It is indeed complicated. I think maybe to add to that is that we need to make sure that, as you said, we are not just kind of adding more work and more responsibilities for women, because the problem of gender issues is not a woman problem, it's a problem, a societal problem. And what we need is really to work as we work with women, to work as with men, to make sure that men are taking responsibility for the changes the societies need. And this is really an important thing. That's why we shouldn't always focus just on women when we do gender work. We should work with both. And this is a different work we're going to do with different groups. Second, coming back to collective land, I am myself from a community in Algeria where we were pastoralists and then we settled. Now we are in a mountainous region where land is very scarce. So in this area, as a woman, I am now, global scientist, but I will never own land in my community. I will never own land individually. So organizing women in cooperatives and associations, for me, this is the only way to break that kind of ceiling of women owning something. Because a woman alone, if I will go alone, I won't own anything. But if I'm organized with other women and we make a project, some ideas which will also be a part of the whole development of the community, then I have chances, and I have this kind of work in my own community, organizing young women, and then it's seen as different. It's seen from the village. It looks at it completely differently. They say, oh, these women are organizing themselves to do something for the community. It's not an individual rights. And I think that we need to change a little bit. Sometimes we are following too much the Western thinking of ownership, and we think, oh, a woman has to own land. That doesn't work for us. So we need to think of a different model for our societies.
Okay. Yeah. Final word to Husna, and then we'll have some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. And I think Lauren and Huria have really put it out well. But also, and I like the last part of what you've said, we are not looking at ownership. And I think that the recognition, even with the few areas we've really worked in, is about access and use. And I think that recognition should come out very well. The other bit we should really start changing our mind, because I think is everywhere. Probably in Africa is a lot, and in Kenya, when you talk of gender, the referral goes to to women only. But the aspects is both contribution. I mean, the contribution of both men and women. Of course, in terms of bringing in the two people to understand the strength of a woman and the strength of a man in this arena, and what are their contribution. That is a very good recognition if we can always bringing out. So as each gender doesn't feel that, of course, that the other, we are in competition in many ways. And the power of many is she's putting out well. The village saving groups, the women groups in Kenya, I know they're called chamas, and how it has really transformed livelihoods and the economic benefit of even a household in that. And I think that with time, it is going to really, be affected more. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. And so we'll now close the session, and I'd like to ask Surendri from IUCN to make some closing remarks. Wherever you like.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this session. It was just so inspiring to hear all these examples, and for representing all these women who are actually on the ground and doing all this work. There was just so much in this session. It was such a rich discussion. But what I was really struck with is how much technical skills are with these women. And when we're talking about owning land and all of these conversations, I think we also need to talk about the intellectual property that really exists among these practices, and how we can make sure that they get the due recognition for that, and that we are not just kind of going into it and exploiting it, that they are included in this process. Really great to hear examples of participatory rangeland management and how it's also helping reduce some of this burden, and actually helping women be part of the mapping of degradation, of actual decision making. And we really need to make sure that that action is happening locally, because one thing that I really took from this conversation is how complex, from all of your examples, it's a totally different approach to management, to restoration. And how do we ensure that? Because a national policy might not be able to address that, because we need that local level of change to really to make sure that these tiny complexities are also incorporated. From Huria's example, the 4 harvesting techniques will probably really stuck with me, because it just kind of shows how much business acumen women have at this level of sort of collaborating with other groups and making things happen. And I think all of us women can see that we've done it in our own lives, and we see that happen in communities. And it's really it's complex to how to recognize that, but I think we need to find ways. And just speaking from ICN, we are really committed to do that with the support of all of you in the room. The last, I think, panel discussion, the short one, was also really important, because it brought in this perspective of that this is not just a conversation about women and for women, it's for all of society. And for things to change, it really also needs a lot of support from men, from these conversations, when they are part of these conversations, to make sure that they lobby for the women and the women part of this community, because that's the only way to make things happen. I am, I think, really excited to see all of your work and continue to follow all of your work. But I think 4 words that kind of stuck with me, not just through this session, but through a lot of sessions, is we really need to make sure there's access to resources, access to rights, and to policy, and into decision making. We need inclusion, and we need agency, but we also need benefit sharing, because everything that's coming out of this, if women don't benefit from this, we're kind of stuck in the same circle. So really great to hear all these examples. And thanks, Fiona, for inviting me to this one. Yeah, I think great job. I would love to stay in touch with all of you and continue to learn about your work. Thanks a lot.